So yeah, I wanted to talk today about evolving beyond the vulnerability whack-a-mole game. I'm sort of a little different, I guess, than a lot of the roles in here. You know, I'm not a developer, I'm not coding, so for all you fighting on Twitter about that, have at it. But really what we do, we're data people. We've been data people for a very, very long time, and we try to arm product managers and lots of organizations with the best data, okay? So I've been doing this for a while. Usually I look like this up here, but I learned that if you actually want some privacy in your life, you grow a beard and your hair down and people don't know the hell you are. They walk right past you. So my new friend back there, I was thinking about a new shirt, maybe like a guy with a beard and a mustache, and it says the new security through obscurity, right? I think we could make some money on that, maybe. But done a lot of things, old school OSVDB, if you've been there, so we've been trying to collect this stuff for a while, a bunch of books. I think my favorite book is the children's book that I wrote. So I meant to bring some, but if you actually want a copy of it, hit me up at some conference and I'll hook you up. So yeah, oh, here's the current picture now, great. All right, so from my standpoint, I think everyone does have some sort of product security problem, right? And there were a lot of themes, you know, being at the end presenting, a lot of the same themes that were being talked about over and over and over, right? So this is my little representation of an organization in this boat sort of going around, right? We even heard the iceberg thing a few times, right? So say, look, everyone has a problem, and you know, but the problem's actually bigger than they think. And when you start to spend the time and you start to put in the grunt work to figure out what's going on and maybe what components and libraries and things that you have, right? You start to go, holy cow, this is bigger. But what I will tell you is, with all the work that we've been doing on the data side, when you really figure out what the hell's going on, right? You might need a bigger boat, if you get my Jaws reference, right? So we're gonna move past the iceberg one, right? So for me, I wholeheartedly, and you can imagine we're data guys, right? So, but everyone you talk to tries to define the problem, right? Whether you tell them you have a problem or they're trying to sell you on what you think the problem is or what they think the problem is. I believe without a doubt that we have a bad data problem, without a doubt. And I spend all day long with my team looking at this stuff, and I believe bad data basically leads us to bad product risk management decisions, okay? So, look, you guys know more than me, the dependence upon software now and other libraries and the growing amount of publication of new software is just, it's an amazing rate right now. And I just quickly found this I was trying to figure out how many repos are on GitHub now, and end of last year it was like 100 million, and it was growing at like something crazy, the amount of repos. I don't even know what it is now, but it's a ton, right? So this stuff isn't going away. We're having more and more software out there. We've heard that quite a bit. So from my standpoint, one of the things we focus on a lot is tracking vulnerabilities, right? This is what we do. So all software has vulnerabilities. Do we agree with this? Do we agree everything is vulnerable still? That was our old OSVDB logo back in the day, right? Everything is vulnerable. And I feel like we're still in that situation, right? And actually, we tracked over 22,000 unique vulnerabilities last year. It's astounding, right? We actually just crossed 200,000 unique vulnerabilities that we've published. And at some point you sort of go, whatever, it's just a number. But when you think about how much data that is to get your head wrapped around in each of your jobs, it's a ton, right? So everything's vulnerable, all software has vulnerabilities. Now, most organizations rely on CV and NVD. If you know us, we've been bashing on CVE forever. We tried for a really long time to support CVE. It just wasn't making the progress, so now we've sort of ramped it up to say, look, I'm okay. I'm not trying to tell you to throw CVE out. You guys do whatever you want. But you can't leave this alone, okay? So here's where I am. Everyone's still relying on CV and NVD. Not everyone really sort of understand how it works. While, you know, a CV ID can get reserved, or it can actually get filled out, and then it gets passed over to NVD, right? And then from there it gets outsourced to Booz Allen, and then it sort of comes back, okay? So there's this long process with it. So most people rely on it. It's missing 67,000 vulnerabilities. And most times when I say this, people get upset with me, right? I get a lot of dirty looks. I get it. I'm used to it by now. It's like finding out Santa Claus isn't real. You're not happy with me that I'm one that broke the news to you if you didn't know it, or you've been ignoring it because you know it, right? 67,000 vulnerabilities. And when it comes down to it, a lot of people want to say things like, oh, you know, I'm sure it's in software that doesn't matter. Well, that's not the case. And from a third-party component library standpoint, it's a big, huge problem, a big gap that CVE has, okay? So, to change this a little graphically, 33% of all vulnerabilities are unknown to organizations that should rely on CVE. That's true. And then the next thing people will say to me, they'll say, all right, maybe it is in software, but I'm sure it's not in anything that's important. It's probably gonna be all low-risk stuff, right? And so when we did our analysis on last year, 45.5% of the vulns not published just last year alone in CV and NVD had a CVSS V2 score between 7 and 10. Now, look, I have a real love-hate love with CVSS, both version 2 and version 3. We can talk about that at the luau, that's a whole other conversation. But these are serious vulnerabilities. So I really want people to walk out of here going, hey, CV and NVD data, if that's in your tooling and your stuff, that's great. But that is a this tall to ride the ride stuff. You are not doing a lot more than you need to, okay? And so at the end of the day, what gets crazy is that the ones that CVE and NVD actually do track, we see them days, weeks, and months late. Has anyone ever gone to look up CVID and you see something that says reserved? Seen this? This is normal. It can be like it a long time. I'm not kidding. Usually 1,500 to 2,000 vulnerabilities a year that have a CVE ID are still in a reserve status. There's tons of them like that, okay? And it's not that the information's not available. It is. Just someone hasn't gone and done the work to get it, easy to parse and look at and all those sorts of things. Okay, so for me, I do think it gets worse when you actually really think about this, right? We think about sort of lack of coverage, right? So just because some sort of scanner or some sort of CVE ID isn't there and you go, oh great, just did an analysis, my components are clean, I didn't get an alert. That isn't the case, right? Because CVE isn't covering it, we know that, right? And then it's not coming quick enough for you to make these decisions in a good fashion. And further than that, even though I feel really confident that we're covering the most stuff, we're not covering everything. We know we're not. The more people I hire, the more damn vulns we find, right? So it's crazy, okay? So the whack-a-mole game, if you like my little picture here, it's a tough game to play right now. And again, I think it comes back to it's bad data, right? And security application people, scanners out there, you guys know you're using this bad data, right? So don't think because you got some vendor in there that they're doing a lot more, because we haven't seen evidence of that yet. So I believe, without a doubt, organizations and product security folks need much better data, right? Now, what I have learned when I talk to people about this sort of stuff, even though I can walk you through it, I can show you all the raw data, you're still giving me dirty looks that you just don't want to believe this, right? Because you probably use CVE in your life. It's probably a primary key. I bet some of your tooling can't even handle it. Some of our customers in the room, when we first signed them up, they were like, why are you sending us all this stuff that doesn't have CVE? Stop doing that, right? Stop giving us better, quicker information, because all we can handle in our tool is CVE IDs. That's a huge problem, okay? So I don't care if you're using my stuff. If you're doing the work yourself, you need to be able to handle vulnerabilities that don't have a CVE ID. So what I've learned, though, is when you effectively try to talk to people about normal things in sort of the cyber world, people lose their minds, right? There's some really common sense type stuff. You say cyber and they go, poof, I don't know what's going on here, right? So I was trying to explain the situation to some not really technical folks about this, and I came up with the CVE doctor, okay? Now, if you think about your current doctor, primary care person, you trust them, don't you? If you start thinking about it, you go, well, how did I get that doctor? Did someone even recommend? I don't know, I just go to the doctor and I trust they tell me what's going on, right? So what if you went to this doctor, this is your doctor, and then they say to you, guess what? There's like 33% of the things that may impact you, I just don't know. I can't tell you about them. Can't help you. So just so you know, come here, 33% of the ailments, I have no clue. Okay? Now, of those 33% of the things that I can't tell you about, 45% of them, they're gonna kill you. That's not a big deal, right? You're okay. The stuff that I can diagnose, I'm usually a couple months late. And in some cases, it might be too late to treat you. You might be too late, right? We might have done that earlier. And then my final thing, which is completely legit, when I do give you the diagnosis, it can be super vague or not even in the right thing or about the right thing, so you don't even know how to treat it properly. We see all the time, like look, for example, Tavis, right? He was doing all this research into security products and whatnot. He started attacking Norton semantic products, great. CVEs came out, right? What did they say? They said vulnerabilities in semantic products. They weren't. They were in third-party libraries. So if any of you have these components in your area and you're like, oh yeah, we map with CVE, life's good, we'd totally know. No, you wouldn't. You'd have no idea because it's vague and it's not there. So this is my let's bring it down to reality. Would you keep going to this doctor? You wouldn't, right? Come on. Okay, so I think it's pretty simply, it's garbage in, garbage out. I mean, there's some amazing platforms and tools, in-house, et cetera. Like, we have to make sure that we got the right data, we're looking at the right things, and the stuff that our organizations are using are being monitored, that are being tracked, okay? So, I believe pretty heavily, what got us here is not gonna get us there. It's pretty simple to say that. But when we step back and we say all software has vulnerabilities, do we all believe that? We all do, right? Should we believe that? Is this a stance that we think we're going to take forever? We're always going to say, tough luck, software has vulns, get over it? Right? Now, again, it's probably another Twitter argument I'm sure I'll get sucked into, but would this stance prevail in any other industry? Right? It would not. Would it be like, look, you can drive my car, but if you get bumped into, you might burn into flames and die. Or you that bridge, that might crash. Who knows, right? So if you think about some of the stuff that we say to people in the cyber context, that we're like, no, that's just the way shit is. Like, there's vulns. What do you want us to do? If you translate that into any other sort of discipline, you start to go, ooh, I sound crazy, right? Like that, we would never put up with that, right? So I saw a lot of other debates about regulatory stuff, and I've been in the cyber insurance space for a while, so I did a lot of research into product liability of physical product, tangible product insurance and cyber insurance. And it's a horrible idea. We know it is, right? I saw a whole bunch of people, but like if we keep with this idea that like just suck it up and deal with it, there's vulns, you gotta deal with it, we're gonna get regulated in my opinion. It is going to come. So I sort of feel like if we can start shifting our mindset maybe, start thinking a little differently, prior to software liability forcing us maybe down a bad path, it feels better to me, okay? So I think if we're honest with ourselves, there are just some types of vulns and classes of vulns that just should not exist anymore, right? I'm not gonna sit up here and say, you should write code that should never have vulns. I do understand that, but there are certain types of vulnerabilities that I feel like, shame, right? Like that really is the case. So if we think about that and we can start to agree with some of that, then we sort of need to evolve, right? We need to start looking at this from a more strategic standpoint, a more problem management approach. So what if I started thinking about what are the vendors that I work with? And this may be an organization thinking about working with you guys, right? Or maybe you thinking about product managers as the library and components that are within your products, right? What are the vendors that care about the security of their products? Who cares about this stuff? Who's trying actively to reduce vulnerabilities prior to shipping to me, right? And then how do they, if unfortunately a vulnerability does make its way, how do they respond to it? What products or libraries and components cost you the most to maintain securely that you're dealing with? What products are more likely to lead to some unauthorized access or maybe even a data breach, right? Start thinking about this instead of us going back to the whack-a-mole game. So I do recognize that there are a lot of products out there, whether it's in components in your products or if it's software that's running, it's just not going anywhere, right? Like this is software that you could, even if it needed to be ripped out because it's horrible, it's probably not going anywhere. So I sort of say, let's not start fighting that battle first, right? But can we start to evaluate new software, new components without being viewed as like horrible people by the development organization, right? Can we start to say to them, hey, before you just go out and pull a whole bunch of stuff done and you did a release before we even like figured it out if it was worth you doing, can we have some better conversations? Now I get a lot of feedback when I talk about this that people want to release and shift left and they want to just release so fast that why would we ever stop to pause about that? So where we start to go is, can we start working this way if we improve and automate maybe some decision making using metrics, using insight, right? So let's think about some of the product metrics that we could use. And I was really pleased to see Microsoft, they have some of their own inside stuff that they track, trying to look at products. We do some of the very similar things to that, but we do some bit more, right? So we look at things like code maturity, we look at vendor response time, we look at time to patch, time to exploit, we look at cost of ownership, and a heck of a lot more. And some of them you may really like and some you may hate, but the data, if you start looking at data, whether the data you have and you're collecting, you can start to get some of these metrics, right? So let's talk about code maturity for a second. So what we try to do with every vuln class and vuln that we can, and we can't do it for everything, so I'm going to put that out there, but we try to sort of rate each vulnerability from 0 to 5, right? So if it's some lame cross-site scripting or SQL injection bug that you shouldn't be embarrassed of, we'll rate it a 0 or 1. If it's some really cool use after free bug or remote overflow or something, maybe it gets a 4, maybe it's a 5, right? And so when we look at it, we start to say, wait a second, what does this allow us to do? Well, we can start to look at a total number of vulnerabilities for a product. We can look at their 5-star ranking, if you will, on where that maturity is. And while that individual maybe use after free bug could have been pretty nasty to the organization, it's actually a good sign for the product, right? It's showing that there's been an investment in secure coding. It's sort of showing us that all the lame bugs have been eradicated out, and now researchers are having to work harder. They're having to work harder to find more complicated things. So it's actually pretty good. And you can start to see over time, is a product getting better? And then what's the likelihood as we start to forecast and predict how many more bugs we think we're going to find in this product that we're using, right? Vendor response time. For all the old school people, right, seeing the battles back and forth between vendors and finding bugs and full disclosure and all that nonsense, we started trying to track how well do vendors work with researchers, right? So for example, you find a bug in some component, you send it off to whether it's an open source project or a vendor, and you say, here's what I've got. We start to track how long it takes them to write back, right? How long do they start to respond? We're not looking for automated, thanks for sending us your stuff, it's going into a black hole. We're looking for, thank you for this, we're going to start looking into it, that kind of thing. And it really helps us to say, do they work well with researchers? And why we find this one really important is because it bleeds in to our most important metric, we believe, the one next, okay? So in this particular case, right, we see this particular product takes 3 days on average for the company to respond to them and say, thanks for the bug report, we're going to start looking into it. If that was 30 or say 300 days, it bleeds into our next one and causes problem, which we call time to patch. And so what our metric is, from the time a vendor knows about a problem, how long does it take them to have a patch out and published so that you can use it, okay? It's pretty eye-opening when you start tracking this. Now, again, I've had a lot of conversations with enterprise folks that have given me lectures about how some certain bugs can take longer, and don't get me wrong, I totally get it. But from your standpoint, from a product manager or an end client standpoint, they're sitting there sort of exposed, right? The vendor at least knows about it, maybe other people do, and they're waiting for this thing to come out, right? So we want to see this number as low as we can. That's our hope, okay? Now, I've also seen quite a bit in some of the other sectors where a patch or an upgrade will be fixed, it'll be done, but they choose not to release it. They choose to wait. Well, we fixed it, but we'll release it with our next cycle 6 months from now, right? So we're seeing some really odd things as we look into those metrics. So for us, it's got to be working, fix, and published. Okay, time to exploit. This is sort of probably one of my favorite ones ever. Back in the day, we always had this theory like, why would attackers spend any time looking for new bugs? Why would they do that? It's hard work. Like, it's a pain in the butt, right? So the theory always was, all right, wait for the patch to come out. They would look at it, right? They'd do a diff or reverse it and figure out what was fixed, and then just start writing exploits for it, right? I mean, makes a hell of a lot more sense than spending all your time researching for something. So we were really never able to prove that back in the day. But now we're tracking all these metrics, trying to be able to explain what's going on. And what some cool things about some of these metrics are, it allows you sort of as a product security person to talk to the development teams and come armed with data about what things look like. So for example, this one basically says, hey, look, how long on average does it take from when a patch comes out until we start seeing exploits being public, okay? So if I'm waiting 80 days for a patch to be published and I got just over 2 months for exploits to come out, you can start now going to your IT teams or your development teams and say, hey, look, I know we talked about this bug and you really don't want to fix it in this cycle, but probably an exploit's going to be coming out in the next 2 months. We'd rather you fix it now than 6 months from now, right? So just trying to understand. Now, what's really interesting when we started doing some of this research, most of what we see is patches come out and then exploits, but there are some where there's a negative number here, and that means exploits out before patches, right? So we're definitely seeing some of that as well. All right, cost of ownership. The number of times people, and I heard this sort of theme today several times too, will say, it's open source, it's free. There's no cost, right? And so what we tried to do was with some of these metrics start to explain there's a cost of ownership. There's a cost of securely maintaining something. So I'm not going to sit here and argue and say you shouldn't use that gem or that library or whatever it is. Go write your own font rendering, image parsing. Like, I'm not saying that. But you need to start understanding that there's a cost to maintain this stuff, okay? So some of these metrics now you can start to understand, how often are those vulnerabilities disclosed, right? So what's the disclosure interval? What's the cadence of releases, right? And so there's lots of things to think about there, but for me, if a new vulnerability is disclosed, say, every 8 days, right? You can look at that and say, man, at least once a month, if not more than a couple times a month, I'm having to, all right, make sure I'm alerted by this vulnerability. Okay, great. Now I got to find it in my organization, and then I got to spend more IT time and resources to fix it, right? You go back to Christine's talk on what did they spend to do some of this stuff. So there are certain components as part of your product that are costing more money to maintain securely. Instead of just playing that whack-a-mole game, we can say, all right, let's look what's in there, and can anything go, right? And that's where I think we can start moving. So if we move beyond the whack-a-mole game, we can start to have metrics like this. You can put it into your own dashboards, right? You can start to do your ratings, whether you like 5-star crash test ratings or A, B, C, D, and all those sorts of stuff, right? And there's a lot of people that have love, hate, and more hate with ratings. I get it. But some of this stuff can now make your life a little bit easier. What I have seen, especially with security teams, if you try to put some sort of line in the sand where you say, you know what? Every single organization we're going to do a risk assessment on, or every single product or component, you got to come to security, and we'll tell you if you can use it or not. And then they show up and they go, great, here's 50 of them. I need it done now. And you say, well, I can't do it. They go, we're going to go around you. We're going to do it the way we've always done. But if you start looking at some of these metrics, right, you can start to say, hey, if it's above this, or if it's 4 stars or 3 stars or whatever it is, go ahead, right? Register it with us or make sure it's in the inventory, whatever. But if we're seeing something that's 1 star, these metrics are below, you got to come talk to us, right? So I think there's some things like that we can start getting better at. Comparisons, right? I mean, think about procurement and even trying to figure out which library should I use if there's options. A lot of times, and even in due diligence, people have no clue, right? So if you put things up and you just look side by side at it and go, yeah, they're all pretty crappy, so anyone you use is fine, but this one here, I know it has like 1 less feature, but it'll cost us much less. I think those are where we want to start going. Okay, again, not everyone loves this rating stuff. I totally get it. Red Hat just a couple days ago put out something saying, hey, there's this whole principles for like accurate security ratings, and most people that do this they don't have no clue about backporting, and so the rating stuff isn't as mature as it needs to be. So what I would challenge you on is sometimes you got to do this work yourself, right? You got to understand how those ratings are calculated. Some of the systems you guys were talking about, start to track some of this data yourself, and then you can really understand what's happening. Just because someone says, it's 3 stars, and you go blindly off, I mean, it might help you, but make sure you understand how this stuff works. So trying to wrap up for you so we can get us back on time. How do we actually move this concept forward? How do we maybe make some progress in this space? I think we got to focus on the things that really matter, right? We got to really focus on those the risks to our organizations and to our products. I mean, there's so many things we get distracted by, these shiny objects that aren't the core problems, and I think we got to be better about that. We've been arguing this for a while. Asset inventory, SBOM, whether you love or hate it, it's just time to get over it. We need an inventory, right? Now, as a vuln guy that's trying to track data, these SBOM people that can't agree on one standard drive me freaking nuts, right? Because it's super hard to track this stuff as it is, but then everyone wants a different format or a different standard and we can't agree on stuff. It makes it so hard to get the data to people that they need, okay? But I think without a doubt, we gotta understand what we have, okay? Whether it's in our products or whether it's just in our organization. We have seen, without a doubt, especially for network scanning and things like that, the old school way of vuln scanning, it worked, okay? Understanding your assets in your inventory, the whole DevOps stuff, what's installed and packages are installed, the second a vuln comes out, being able to say, where am I vulnerable across your organization? It's so much faster, much more efficient. We're starting to see things in energy and healthcare and others that don't even want to scan at all, or they're, air gapped, right? Like we need to make sure that we have asset inventory so we can start doing this intelligent stuff better. I do really hope that people can start evaluating software prior to buying. I know its in usage is going to be tough. Now I will tell you, we have a few customers in the audience here, and when I was first telling them about some of our metrics, they hated the idea. They thought it was horrible, right? They were like unhappy with me, and they didn't want me to put these metrics out, and I understand. But I think in many ways our data has helped product managers actually get more budget and explain to people this is what we're being evaluated on, right? We've even seen P-certs managers come to us and complain and say, our numbers are wrong. And we'll say, well, we didn't make this up. I can show you the numbers. And what they found out was, there was that one product that wasn't actually in the whole product, the product cert thing. So they were doing an amazing job and they had SLAs over here, but that one product over here wasn't getting the same love. And so using that information to help sort of standardize things really helps. So I think if we start seeing more and more companies pushing vendors on stuff like this, right? Starting making decisions about, look, you gotta care about security instead of the next feature in the widget. It's gonna sort of flip things. And then maybe I won't be here 10 years from now going, guess what? We tracked the most vulns ever. It just keeps on going, right? Something has to be flipped here. And I'm hoping that this can help in a positive way and not make life hell for everyone. So make the best risk decisions. Evaluate your own data collection. Please, just evaluate it. If it makes sense and you're covered, awesome. If not, expand what you're doing. And we believe, without a doubt, better data, better risk decisions. So with that, I appreciate it. I know we got a bus and everything, so are we good? Okay. All right, cheers. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, so some CVE questions. And I do like, Bob, I love you, so some of these you can chime in on if you want. I would tell you honestly, so the question really is about, is it lack of funding? I don't think it is. They've got a ton of money. I've just found it very interesting that vuln tracking is like horrible grunt work. I mean, it's probably up there with, was it the whale researcher feces thing? It's tough work, and I just think, I don't know. If you look at it, I don't think money is going to solve the CVE problem. We were on the CVE editorial board for 10 years back in the OSVDB days, kept trying to get it fixed, and I just think you need to recognize what CVE is, accept it for what it is. It's got some value, but it's not going to cover the gaps that you need. Have you attempted, or tied code maturity to a financial loss of a real world exploitation? I will tell you that's like the nirvana for us. Like we also track data breaches, if you guys know that. So we have like data breaches that we track, and we put all this metadata on it, and we're so trying to track like specific vulnerabilities to an actual breach so we can do more modeling, especially the cyber insurance space. All the actuarials love to do modeling. It is such hard data to get. And the people that can get that data, like Verizon, right, with their DBI reports, they can't really tell you anything. They can't tell you the specific organizations or tie it back, unfortunately. So there's some really great work that other organizations do that can get deeper. Whereas we're a little more broad. I can tell you about a hell of a lot more, but we weren't on site doing the forensics work, so I can't tell you exactly how they got popped and things like that. All right, with that, cheers. I'll be around. Thanks. Really appreciate it.